Into World War II, millions of American women answered the government's call to enter the workforce as enlisted males left their roles in the industrial labor force. Between 1940 and 1945, the percentage of United States women in the workforce increased to nearly 37%. By 1945, 1 out of every 4 married women worked outside of their homes. In 1943, more than 310,000 women workers worked in the United States aircraft industry, making up 61% of the industry's workforce. The munitions industry also recruited women. As illustrated in the Rosie the Riveter's propaganda, based on a real-life munitions worker, but primarily a fictional character, Rosie became one of the most successful recruitment tools for women working in World War II. Their campaign slogan was "Do the job he left behind." In addition to factory work and other homefront jobs, approximately 315,000 women joined the armed forces. General George Marshall supported this idea of introducing a women's service branch into the Army. Women produced many war-related goods and usually participated in non-combat military roles such as nursing, although they also ferried planes from factories to bases, transported cargoes, and participated in simulation strafing and target missions. Nursing was dangerous in the war. Many nurses were stationed in Singapore, which was for the Allied forces in the Pacific. They were also a part of the Women's Air Force service pilots.
Even though African Americans have faced many hardships and racial oppression, they played a key role in supporting the country and war effort in World War II. World War II was what started integration for post-war military in the United States. It has been said that 2.5 million African Americans signed up for the draft and nearly 1 million helped out as volunteers for the war effort. Although they greatly supported war efforts, equality was still an issue in the United States. There was a separate draft for African Americans and even segregated war units. Discriminatory hiring practices for jobs caused many to migrate to cities in order to find jobs in war plants. In addition, most served in non-combat roles instead of combat roles. Fortunately, they were allowed to be a part of the Tuskegee Airmen. In this unit, African Americans served in Europe with distinction, meaning they were easily told apart from other races. On the home front, a Double V campaign was launched. This campaign was started in order to gain equality. It stood for democracy, victory at home, and victory abroad. A saying went around proclaiming, "We have a stake in this fight. We are Americans too." Although African Americans did not want war, many gained U.S. citizenship and acquired more rights because of the war. African Americans that fought received much praise for overcoming hardships and equality, as well as risking their lives for their nation.
Asian groups listed included Japanese, Filipino, and foreign-born from Asia. As the century progressed, many Japanese Americans became established in industries, and by the time World War II began, they were able to enter the middle class. After the 1941 Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the federal government relocated 120,000 of Japanese descendants in the name of national security. 2/3 of the Japanese Americans were actually American-born, and therefore citizens. Most of them were incarcerated in 10 remote relocation camps scattered around the western part of the United States for more than 2 years, despite never being convicted for a crime. When the war was over, the Japanese were released and they were forced to rebuild their lives that were once taken from them. Given Chinese ally status, Chinese suffered less discrimination than Japanese did and therefore joined the military. In 1943, Congress passed the Magnuson Act, which repealed the Chinese Exclusion Act. Chinese Americans were able to bring wives to America, beginning a new generation in the United States. Approximately 250,000 Filipino men joined the U.S. Armed Forces to fight World War II. Nisei regiments earned many medals throughout the war. During World War II, the Germans were taping in and listening to many of the United States telephone calls and breaking the codes. Due to this, various Indian languages were used, making it impossible for the Germans to break. The Navajo Indian language was the most successful with the use of nearly 600 terms. They became known as code talkers, and their tribes have received honors and recognitions for their help to the success in World War II. Many Mexican Americans volunteered to fight in World War II, and because of this, they had the highest success rate for receiving honors than any other minority unit. They also fought in non-segregated units. The United States' success in the war required the total commitment of the nation's resources. On the home front, public education and the mass media promoted. During World War II, the media and entertainment industry saw their role as supporting the war effort by promoting nationalism. The United States government maintained strict censorship of reporting the war. Public morale and ad campaigns kept Americans focused on the war effort. The entertainment industry produced movies, plays, and shows that boosted morale and patriotic support for the war effort. In addition, the Axis powers were also portrayed.